My name's Catherine and this is Glenn.
G'day.
And today's the 9th of February 2010 and you're watching Australia Unshackled, defeating the British Empire. So what are we going to cap off today with, Glenn? What are we going to discuss?
Well, the last program we had here, we was discussing the truth about the foundation of Australia and Australia Day. And shortly after that show, we were out on the streets of Melbourne organising around Australia Day, and we had a banner that said Australia Day should be Independence Day, and lots of signs and lots of organisers out there giving out the latest, this new citizen, defeat the British Empire of monetarism.
With on the banner we had the Union Jack, and it was actually cut out of the Australian flag, which, you know, there's been a lot of controversy of with our feedback from our last show. But, you know, just as a footnote, we're not saying just to take off the British Union Jack. It's about the British Empire. There's a difference, just so we emphasise now, there's a difference between the British people and the British Empire. And for those who had, you know, posted comments, it's pretty obvious that some people don't understand the difference between the British Empire and the British people. Yeah. When we say British Empire, we mean British Empire, the monetary system. It's an ideology, not a race.
Which is exactly what was the subject of that New Citizen special report,
which is why
on
you
Australian
should read
history.
It. Exactly, you should read it.
So, I mean, yeah, we hit the streets, and I found that, you know, the overwhelming response from young people was a complete openness to this, you know, this question of, you know, the direction of Australia, where we're going, are we really sovereign? And many thinking young people recognise that it's not about a symbolic debate or some sort of symbolic change, but about true sovereignty.
Mm-hmm. And this is where you get a lot of people that are actually, believe it or not, they're actually for a republic. So you get it's a very surprising, because the people that actually stop are, you know, a lot of them, they recognise that they do need to actually get rid of this British Empire, not the British people, I emphasise, but, you know, a system of economy and a system of ideology. We have to change the ideology. Can't emphasise that enough.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, this was something that was really hit at a lot on January 30th. Lyndon LaRouche, economist from the United States, held an international webcast which was viewed across the world via internet. And he really laid out this crucial distinction between a world dictated by the British Empire, which is what we have today, a world dominated by monetarism and dominated by the environmentalist ideology, which is a no-future ideology, and on the other hand, nations that are actually committed to development, to developing their nation.
So you have globalisation, free trade, anti-sovereign nation states, which is the British Empire, in a monetary system. So you've got that as the British Empire, and then on the other side you've actually got pro-development, which includes, you know, the Pacific region of the world, which is actually trying to get, you know, nuclear energy and large-scale infrastructure projects to develop their nation.
Yeah.
And which we can go into sometime in the future, that nuclear power is actually very safe, very efficient and very clean. Which will raise a few eyebrows, because that's not what you get told in the media.
Right.
So
it is the case, you know, you look at what the future, what we must do to support 6.7 billion people and growing over the next 50 years.
And the case is right now, we don't actually have we're not using the resources, or we're not actually using what we have got to develop those populations of 6.7 billion people. But we could do, and that's what the sad thing is we don't actually, you know, use the potential that we have to be able to develop these countries. We're quite capable of doing it, so let's actually start doing it.
Yeah, I mean, instead you've got nations that are, you know, being told that they have to go green, they have to, you know, build solar panels and windmills and this type of thing, and this is what the future holds. And it was in Lyndon LaRouche's webcast, that he pointed out in the world that places like Europe and the United States at the present time and South America, they're committed to currently committed to a green agenda under Obama and under the European Union, where nuclear power development and science and technology of, you know, going into space, having a space program, these types of things, well, that's being pushed off the agenda. It's being, you know, they're saying we've got to cut budgets, we've got to, you know, go to this green direction, and it's, as LaRouche emphasised repeatedly, that means death.
And a lot of exactly, and a lot of these places that are actually doing it, the majority of the regions are Europe, and with Europe, it's been locked down with the Maastricht Treaty, which actually gives you a cap on how much your debt you're actually able to go into. And you know, debt is bad in certain situations, but debt can also be a good thing. It depends upon which economy you're actually operating within.
Yeah, when you're like spending it on infrastructure, long-term development programs, building bridges, railway, I mean, that's a good debt.
Yeah, exactly. And what Ambrose Evans Pritchard actually put out a couple of days ago, I think it was last week actually, can't remember the time, but it was around this period last week. He actually put out a article in the London Times, and it was put on the London Times internet website, and it was taken down about an hour and a half later. But we were lucky enough to actually capture what he said in that article, and it's pretty telling, and it's a wonder, it's no question why they actually took it off the internet. So we have a couple of quotes that we're going to read. Did you want to read them, Glenn?
Well, yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, one of the things that in this saucy article by Evans Pritchard was that he admitted, and he pretty much laid out, that you've got these nations which are called pigs in the media and other places, which includes Portugal, Ireland, Greece and Spain, that are right now facing a national debt which is, you know, they're saying is out of control, and they're about to have a sovereign default. And pretty much what this article is covering is, you know, there's right now investigations being run by this European Economic and Monetary Union to pretty much work out how these nations have to deal with this debt, this national debt. And their policy is austerity. You've got to cut the budget, you've got to cut it any way possible. And that
what was the quote?
One of the things that Evans Pritchard said was, if they fail to marshal public support for draconian austerity, they risk being cast into Icelandic oblivion, which is pretty much they're going to be pushed out of being able to get credit to finance, you know, development. Which
actually would matter because they're bankrupt right now, and if they actually go towards being a sovereign nation and not being dependent of other nations or other factors that are pushing them down to a certain amount of credit that they're allowed to spend, they could actually loan credit upon themselves to develop. Wipe their debts off that they can't pay because they're going to kill people, and actually start developing.
Right.
Which, you know, wouldn't be a bad thing if they actually went away from that, because it would actually be going away from the British Empire. Because what he's talking about is actually a function of the British Empire.
Yeah, and that's one of the other things that he actually says is that under the European Union, this new legal order, this new ever closer union, has replaced what he calls a largely obsolete concept of sovereignty. And that, you know, this is the condition that the European nations find themselves in, is that sovereignty is a thing of the past, that they have to, you know, hold up the expectations of, you know, a financial power, which is not even in their nation.
So they're actually puppets, or they're enslaved to the British Empire, which is, you know, you've got the Reserve Bank of Australia. You've got the I wrote them down before. There's a whole conglomerate, a whole faction of banks that actually work under the British Empire.
Yeah, like, I mean, in America, you have the US Federal Reserve. You also have the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. These organizations, these central banks, they basically, they're there to impose the conditions on which nations can get credit or
Yeah.
not. And
So it controls them, because
Yeah.
whoever owns your credit, whoever owns your money, owns your economy essentially, or your country. So the fact that our RBA, our Reserve Bank of Australia, they are a faction of the British Empire, the central banking system, which is a faction of the parliamentary system. Whoever owns our credit, they own our economy, and we are not a sovereign nation state. So emphasising again, the reason why we have to break from the British Empire, this whole faction of the British banks, get away from those banks and form a national bank. Our own sovereign national bank, so that we can control our credit, control where it goes, how it operates, how much we have, etc., etc., etc. Rather than being tied to, somebody else's dirty money. Which it is, a lot of it is dirty money, which has to be wiped off the books.
yeah, it's actually something which true Australian patriots understood. I mean, like Jack Lang, who knew that the banking system which dominated Australia was based in Britain, and also Frank Anstey, who was the mentor to John Curtin, was someone who also identified that you've got this financial power, which is based in London, but it's not British, it's international, and exert this control over the economies of the world. And the only way that you can deal with that is to take control of the economics and finance of the nation, like the Americans did under people like Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, and under their constitution, which is what you're starting to see. I think you see a direction of development in these Asian nations, which LaRouche pointed out in the webcast.
And you look at what the United States actually is, and what they're doing right now under the Obama administration. What they're doing under the Obama administration is actually what the United States is not. And you look at, because if you want to get a new financial system internationally, you actually have to work with the United States that has the Constitution. They have, embedded within their identity what it is that we need internationally to obtain development and the general welfare principle. And Obama, he's actually representing what Hitler did in the 1930s under the T4, and we can look into this because it's quite controversial, the T4, the Tiergarten policy that was designed to work out who was going to get payment for the healthcare and who was not. So basically there was a board to decide who was acceptable of healthcare and who was not.
Who lives, who dies,
Yeah,
based
exactly.
on cost analysis.
Yeah.
I mean,
And you've got a bankrupt economy in the United States. It's bankrupt here too, and we're going to look into this more in the next weeks. That you've got this healthcare reform that Rudd's talking about, but in the United States, it's bankrupt. They need a new economy. What Glenn said, they're cutting back, funding. They're cutting back money to what? To support the banking institutions that are bankrupt, that don't represent the population, that actually represent the British Empire. Hence why we've got to get rid of them.
and there's just, you have just breaking in the recent days is a completely, it's sort of like the straw that breaks the camel's back for Barack Obama in the United States, is that he has pushed an agenda for austerity with the healthcare, with his Nazi-like, cuts in healthcare. But now what he's committed to do in his budget announcement is that he's committed to cutting the NASA Constellation program, which would put NASA effectively out of any form of, meaningful technological work. I mean, Constellation program by NASA is the commitment to put Americans back on the moon, to develop and put men on Mars, which really means the future. I mean, development, technology,
Because it leads
and
into
science.
so many more different discoveries that'll, enhance and benefit the future of mankind. And actually get their heads thinking a little. Because, we're not really thinking right now. We've got to start actually using what we've got, which is which is creativity.
Yeah, and
But Obama doesn't represent that at all. Represents smashing it.
Well, yeah, what does it mean when you say that, we're going to cut the leading edge of our science and technological development because we want to balance a budget? We want to, at the same time that you're committing to bailing out Wall Street, you're bailing out the British Empire
but then you're also,
and that system.
Yeah, and then you're also committing genocide on the behalf of Adolf Hitler's policy of healthcare, where you have a board that chooses who's going to live and who's going to die for the sake of money.
Yeah.
And that's all to save the British Empire.
So I think it's clear.
Lynn has actually called for Obama's impeachment, and rightfully so.
That's what I was going to say. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's important. I mean, as you're saying, Catherine, that right now, this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. Obama now must be impeached if the United States is to actually survive as a nation with a decent future.
Yeah.
Because he's bailing out the British Empire.
Yeah, well, he certainly doesn't represent the population, and that's exactly why they're angry. So, but this is the thing. We're actually, in Australia, it's hit America quite dramatically. It's almost like the cancer. It's now official that the cancer is there empirically. You can see the cancer taking form. Here, we've got the cancer in the economy, but the symptoms haven't fully grasped its full potential, its full hold on the economy. But we've got a housing bubble, as what the United States had, because we're both under the same system of globalization and money. We've got a bubble here. You have people buying houses, participating in the bubble, and you've gotten to a point where the homeowners grant, which offers a certain amount of money to pay for first home buyers, it's gotten to a point where those people that have gone into these mortgages can't pay. And it's a situation where if you don't have reliable jobs, which we really don't, they're casual jobs, they're white collar jobs, a lot of them are getting laid off. If you don't have a real guarantee with your job, you lose your job, you can't pay. Things go up, you can't pay. You've got your mortgage, your bills, your kids, etc., etc., etc. And it gets to a point where it reaches a threshold where people can't pay for their mortgages. And it's actually come out recently, a couple of days ago, there's been a report saying that the first home buyers are actually starting to be in severe mortgage stress.
Yeah, you've got a company, a Fujitsu consulting company, revealed that almost half of all young people that were hoodwinked into Kevin Rudd's first home owners scheme, this grant of a few tens of thousands of dollars for a house, almost half of them are in mortgage stress. They're using credit cards to pay off these new homes that they've found themselves
or essential items that they need to have.
Yeah, and there's even several of them are in severe mortgage stress. And the key thing is the government knows that they are feeding a bubble with this. It's not a mistake. They're feeding this thing because that's what our economy has become largely based on.
Yeah,
as
right.
you were saying, this bubble.
Well, because it started off with houses would be worth, say, $50,000. Then they reached $300,000, and that's not an exaggeration. That's first-hand knowledge that this happens. They go from $300,000. Somebody buys that house off the $300,000, the person that had it for $300,000. They sell it. That other person sells it for $500,000. Person that bought it for $500,000 sells it for $600,000, etc., etc., etc. There's your bubble, and you've got it in a situation where it's feeding a banking system that's actually bankrupt. Because the bank, this whole credit crunch, the mortgages were the trigger, but they weren't the cause. Because the reason why they had to have the housing bubbles to begin with was because they already had a lack of credit in the banking. The banking system was bankrupt to begin with. That's why they had a housing bubble.
Yep. That
they had to create.
And that's the cancer you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
That's it. Our government and bankers have been trying to put makeup on this dying system.
Saying it doesn't have cancer, which in fact
Yeah,
It does.
and they're trying to pretend that there's a recovery around, but every thinking individual can see that that is not the case. That the
And-
solution has never been put on the table, and the solution uniquely is that which the Citizens Electoral Council presented and Lyndon LaRouche in the United States presented, that you've got to put this whole system through reorganisation.
And as a reference, we actually produced a DVD called the Homeowners and Bank Protection Bill, which goes step by step pretty much on the fact that we are the only real solution in the country. We're the only opposition in the country, really. And it's exactly why we're asking people today to join us, make a contribution. If you're not doing something and you can be doing something, email in, call us. Our email will be up on the screen.
Yeah, might want to read that out.
It's LYM, LYM, at cecaust.com.au. So it's LYM at cecaust.com.au. And our phone number will be up on the screen too. But we'll give you our phone number. It's 1-800-636-432. And if you want to actually do some more, if you've got some questions to ask us some questions. We're happy to answer them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, basically, we're the only solution. We're the only political party that's actually offering a solution. You should join us. We need your help. We're a self-funded political organisation, and we can't do this without the population's support, because they know that we need to do something, and we need more people on board to help us do that.
Yeah. So if you're still finding yourself shackled by the British empire of monetarism, you need to keep tuning in and do everything Kat laid out right here today.
We've got plenty of material to educate you, so there's no shortage. Just call us and we'll give you some. But we better get going.
So cool. This has been Australia Unshackled, Defeating the British Empire. Today is Tuesday, February 9th. My name's Glenn.
And I'm Catherine.
And we'll catch you next time.
Have a good day.